1.5 years, and we welcome innovators, thought leaders, solution providers, startups, CEOs, and World Bank teams, which are developing innovative solutions and data-driven and digitally enabled solutions for transforming agriculture and food systems. Today's webinar is organized jointly with FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And this series is also available on our digital agriculture website and Open Learning Campus. Vivek, could you put the slides in, please? Yeah, the Open Learning Campus, you will find all the webinars which have been done till now, recordings and presentations. And today's ones will be also provided on the same platform. And this Open Learning Campus is visited by thousands of people all over the world. So even if people are not able to attend the session now, they will have access to this later on and use this for learning for various learning programs which are being organized all over the world. Today, we have a very exciting webinar on scaling up soil moisture index-based insurance services. I think we are very excited to have a very distinguished panel today. Just to let you know that please, we use the chat window for asking questions. And so you can start asking questions when the presentations are even going on. And I would encourage all the panelists to keep looking at the chat window as well and try to answer some of the questions in the chat as well. But at the end of it, we will curate questions which are coming from the audience and go for another round with all the panelists there. So we will make sure that all the questions you are asking are taken there. But please use the chat box very actively. And please keep yourselves muted if possible, because then it will allow us to have the thing properly. So now coming to today's webinar, I think we are very excited about this webinar because I think it just shows the power of data to transform services, products and services. Smallholders and farmers receive services in a very different way, normally because they are not data driven. They are driven a lot based on very kind of measurements and all that, which are outdated. And then people do not take the products and services because they think it's not effective. And also the people who deliver products and services find the cost very prohibitive. So today we are seeing a good confluence of something, soil moisture, which I think every farmer thinks is very important to them. And I think it's a very big variable for crop growth and agriculture. And we are now bringing in VanderSat, very innovative solution provider who has developed a unique soil moisture data set talking about it. And we also bring in then other people who are using that data, including ACRE Africa, Mezzanine, and SwissRe, who are really trying to do this in Africa now and see how they can take that data and develop innovative products and services. So today's panel is, I'll briefly introduce them. You have their CVs in the announcement. It's Lexi Ratering-Arns, Head of Impact Strategy at VanderSat, who will really show us the VanderSat soil moisture data set and its applications and talk about it. And then we have Amos Tabalia, Head of Research and Development at ACRE Africa, a very important insurance and financial services player in Africa and has done very innovative things using data and digital technologies. And we are also working with them in Africa and Kenya as well. Then we have Gidraf Vachira, who was Program Manager for Connected Farmer as Mezzanine Private Limited. Mezzanine is a very innovative player in this business, and Gidraf will bring in his experience on how Mezzanine is using these approaches in their solutions. And finally, we have Marcel Andries, who is the Head of Agriculture R&D Innovation and Senior Underwriter Agriculture at SwissRe. SwissRe is a leading player in this agriculture innovations and insurance business. and Marcel will talk about it from the industry perspective. And then we have a rich panel of discussants. We have Carlo Brevi, who is the lead in the digital agriculture, senior economist with FAO Investment Center Division. We have our Edimula Bremo, who is coordinator for Climate Smart Agriculture Program in Africa, and really coordinates all of our work on climate smart agriculture in Africa, and is working on many operations there. We have Nukumo after that, who is an agriculture specialist with agriculture and food global practice at the World Bank. And Nukumo is working in the climate smart agriculture group, and is also developing very innovative ways of measuring soil carbon, and has started a very interesting program on the measurement of protocol and data set for soil carbon there. So very, very good to have Nukumo here. And then finally, we have Vijay Kalakonda, who is the Senior Operations Officer with IFC in the World Bank Group, who is also our global is a kind of a global lead on all our financial services, insurance, and risk management operations, and has worked in a number of countries to develop innovative as well as large-scale insurance solutions for smallholders and farmers. So a very rich panel. And so we will have initially Lexi and the panelists talking, and then we have brief discussions, and then we have at least half an hour at the end with Q&A. So without further ado, I will now pass on over to Lexi. Lexi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Parmesh. Let me start my video as well. Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting us to this platform. I'm very excited to talk about VanderSat. I work as head of impact strategy at VanderSat. And in the following presentation, let me flip my slides, I'm going to introduce what we are doing, what we're all about, what soil moisture is, how we measure it. I will demo our data, and then I'll talk about how we can transfer that soil moisture records to a parametric insurance application. So first, VanderSat is a provider of global satellite observed data, and we have a focus on water and crops. So what we basically see is we monitor this blue planet every day, and we see the climatic changes that are happening. And we also see the impact those changes have on the water availability and the crops on a daily basis. And with that information, we want to do good. We want to support clients, customers, partners with insights so that they can either mitigate or adapt to the water and food crises that are existing in some parts of our planet. So how do we do that actually? How do we measure water availability? Well, we use a technology that's called passive microwave remote sensing. And yeah, some of the satellites that are listed below have such a sensor on board, by which they observe the Earth's surface and measure the energy emitted in a very low energy part of the spectrum. These are the so-called microwaves. And these microwaves, so that energy, we sort of transform that with a model into soil moisture observations. And that technology has the advantage of being able to see through clouds. Basically, every time the satellite flies over, you get a valuable image or valuable measurement of the Earth's surface, and in this case, soil moisture. So we do not only measure soil moisture today or tomorrow, we can actually put it in a way a longer history. So we can measure soil moisture back to 2002. So I already mentioned that the satellite flies over pretty frequently. And for example, in Europe, this is satellite, and we get an image every day. And when you move a bit closer to the equator, it gets a little bit less because of the satellite orbit, but it's about once every 2 or 3 days you get a valuable image. So this really allows you to do an operational monitoring service on soil moisture. The other unique quality of our data set is that it's available at 100-meter resolution. And this is because at VanderSat we have developed a patented algorithm that downscales raw satellite observations and makes use of all the overlapping patterns to retrieve soil moisture at this field scale level. Some of the other characteristics of our data set, some of them I've already mentioned, but we can really process our data globally. So anytime, anywhere on the Earth, we can basically turn on the processing and you can get your monitoring service for soil moisture. We provide soil moisture data 6 hours after the satellite overpass, so it's a near real-time service. I already mentioned the long time series that we have. This is very essential because everything that you're seeing or witnessing today, for example, a drought developing here or an excess moisture event in another place, you can actually put that into perspective. We are also consistently involved in all sorts of validation studies to be able to see, okay, how well is our satellite data performing to ground networks of soil moisture data, and we find really good correlations across all geographies where we do our validation studies. And if you also want to know more about that, I can refer you to our documentation page on our website where we have more of these validation studies listed. So besides soil moisture, we also have other building blocks at VanderSat. We have our soil moisture temperature, but which we also have available in real time at 100-meter resolution. And we recently developed a new product called the biomass proxy. And I simply just want to highlight that here because it's a very unique product. It's available at a 10-meter resolution, and it's a daily data set. So usually, when people are trying to measure vegetation health, they use an index called the NDVI. And the NDVI is a proxy for vegetation health. It measures the greenness of the vegetation. The biomass proxy, as we have actually developed it, also includes the water content of the vegetation. So to show you what that means, I have the next slide where I plot the two together. So in this graph, you can see in the red dotted, you can see the NDVI observations. And in the blue line, you can see the biomass proxy developed at VanderSat. And what actually happens is that NDVI is derived from optical satellites. It means it basically derived from pictures of the Earth's surface. So sometimes when there's cloudy conditions, you have no information. And that allows you, during the growing season, this is often also very rainy conditions. So that allows you to not see anything, basically, of the crop or of the cover crops. So by now introducing this biomass proxy product, you can actually still see the biomass evolving and developing over time, even when there's cloudy conditions. So what do we do with all these building blocks at VanderSat? Well, we optimize precision farming advices by plugging our data sources into digital agriculture platforms, optimizing irrigation advices or fertilizer advices. And because there's such a strong link between soil moisture and crop yield, we can actually during key moments in the growing season, we can already predict what the crop yields are going to be looking like at the end of the season. So we have also services in this area. And of course, what I'm talking to you today about is how do we plug these data sets and make an insurance product out of it. So we monitor the drought conditions of a growing season of a farmer, and when it really gets very dry and he gets into it, his crop gets damaged, then there's a payout linked. So I'll explain much more about this. A snapshot of where we are at the continent at this moment. We have two operational running services, one in Kenya, developed together with ACRE Africa, and Amos will talk more about this. We have, it's called the Amazing Crop Insurance Program, where we have drought insurance for maize farmers. And together with Mezzanine and SwissRe, we developed a product for sunflower farmers active in Tanzania, where Giraffe will also talk more about later. And we're working on adding a range of other pilots and hopefully operational services in the future, as well as other services. So I'm really curious also to hear about you on the call, where you see opportunities, for example, for collaborations as well. But first, let's go back to the basics. What is soil moisture really? And why is soil moisture such an important variable, we think, to measure? Because if you take a look at the hydrological cycle, there's a lot of parameters that you have to take into account. It's raining, but part of that evaporates, part of that is intercepted by the crops, part of it runs off by the surface, part of it is infiltrated. And all of those parameters or influences actually determine what is the water available for the plant in the end. And by being able to observe that directly, that's the most direct you can get in terms of inputs of water available to the plant. The way it is measured, it's actually the unit of it is cubic meter of water per cubic meter of soil. So if you take a cubic meter of soil, There's a lot of part of it that's soil particles. There's some air inside. There's some organic matter like roots. And there's a part of it that's water. And the water, we are quantifying that. So it ranges typically from 0 to 0.5, where 0.5, the soil is like extremely saturated. So I now want to show you what satellite observed soil moisture looks like. So for that, I'm going to just change screens over here, and I hope you can see that as well. So over here, I have Zimbabwe outlined. And in the back, you see a soil moisture image plotted. But by now, you're probably not so impressed because it looks super pixelated, actually. So what you're seeing over here is the openly or freely available soil moisture product at the Copernicus Climate Services. It has a resolution of 25 by 25 kilometers. And yeah, it's a really great product for if you want to say something about soil moisture or developments at continental scale. But if you're interested at the more high resolution scale, if you want to say something about what's happening at the farm or district level, I really want to recommend the VanderSat product, which I'm now going to slide to you on the right side. So over here, you can see what soil moisture product looks like. So I'm sort of zooming in here so you can see the 100-meter resolution product here on the right side versus the log core scale. So I'm just now gonna remove this over here, zooming out a little bit so you can see some more. And for example, I can click here on a given day and I see, okay, for this location, the soil moisture was about 0.17 cubic meter of water per cubic meter of soil. But a single observation doesn't really tell you much. You need to be looking at that, of course, in time. So in another window, I prepared something for you. Just take a sip of water. So over here, what do we see? On the left side, I have plotted all the districts of Zimbabwe. And basically, if I click on this district, I can sort of go to a dashboard that I have already prepared on the right side. And that dashboard shows here the soil moisture developments pretty much over time during the season of 2019-2020 in Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe has a unimodal rainfall pattern like most South African countries. And yeah, you see the progression of soil moisture over time during the season. But I can tell you that actually this season was pretty dry. But you won't really believe me unless I sort of put it in perspective. So I'm gonna show you a longer time series. So this one, it runs from 2015 to about recently, 2020. And then you can already see, okay, so in the season of 2016, 27, it seemed to have got way more water. And the soil moisture seems to have been dropping both in the 2019, 2020 seasons. So it becomes even more clear when I add the climatology to it. So that's the black line, and it reflects sort of the normal conditions during that time of the year. And then you can start to see deviations. Okay, when is it drier than normal? When is it wetter than normal? So now if I zoom in again on this time, you can see indeed, okay, it seemed to be really below normal. So taking this insight, I actually extracted this data, and I will go back to my presentation, where I plotted the same information in this graph. It shows basically the growing season in this district, Marondera, over 2019-2020. And you can see in the black line, the normal conditions. In the blue line, you can see the soil moisture observations, basically throughout the season of 2019-2020. And what you can see really clearly is that you have a big orange area called anomaly. And the anomaly is basically the deviation from normal condition, and it reflects the soil moisture deficit. So it reflects basically a drought building up. And you can see that it seems to be very severe. So usually within insurance, we look at the growing season of the plant. So over here, I'm taking an example where I've made like a sort of an example product. It could be maize, where you have your 3 phases. In the first phase, you have your germination phase. The second phase could be the growing phase, and the third phase is more like maturity harvesting phase. And then you can start to see, wow, okay, there's a big drought deficit building up in the first phase. So this probably messed a lot with the farmers that were trying to plant in this season, either failing because there was not even enough soil moisture to start planting, or they either planted and then afterwards there was no rain to really grow the plant any further. So yeah, if I now want to ask further, like how abnormal was that drought during that time? And should the farmers have been compensated, at this time? So for this question, we need to not only look at the year of 2019, 2020, but we need to zoom out and look at all the years, all the historical, time series that we have, and compare it against a normal condition. So over here, there's a lot of information, but for example, you can see in 2020, 2019, okay, the soil moisture was really above normal at that time of the year. And this actually reflects with record yields at this moment from the past season in Zimbabwe. And then some other years are drier, like 2002. So what we do next is actually sum up these deficits. So we accumulate the negative anomalies, as we say that, and we plot it into the next graph to see, okay, which of the years for the start of season phase have been severe. And now you can really see the drought severity of the 2019-2020 season popping out. So really the most drought severe, as we can see in the records. Also 2002, 2003, and 15 were also quite dry as well. So I'm going to reshuffle that and put that into a cumulative distribution. And what parametric insurers do is then plot a parametric distribution throughout this. And this parametric distribution really allows us to say something about the probability of a drought event happening. So if I'm curious about how abnormal that event was in the 2019-2020 early season, I will have to just look at the probability, and I can now say that that sort of drought occurs once every 28 years. So it's pretty abnormal. So this sort of statistical analysis actually brings us to talk about, okay, how do we set triggers then for this product? How big does the drought deficit need to be before a farmer gets a payout? And this is summarized in this conceptual image, where you have sort of an insurance product structured in 3 phases. And then there's different triggers set for each phase that correspond to a certain drought or soil moisture deficit that have been building up. So if this soil moisture deficit is very big, it probably hits an extreme drought trigger and the farmer gets a big payout. When there's a moderate drought monitored or actually observed, then the payout would be more moderate. And the cool thing about it is that this is not a sort of an end of season picture. You can actually sort of do this throughout the season, and therefore the payouts can actually be much quicker as well. So I want to sort of wrap up my part by saying by setting out why we think that VanderSat dataset is very suitable for parametric drought insurance, because it addresses some of the issues that the conventional products have. Some of the insurance product or drought insurance products run based on a network based on consist out of field agents, and they actually go to the farm to do damage assessment, which is very costly, and it's not so objective as satellites can monitor when they fly in a sort of an orbit. Also, soil moisture, as I already laid out, is more of a direct variable related to crop yield as some of the other parameters of the data sets. We provide also quite a high resolution data set. Some of the data sets out there are coarse resolution, which increases the basis risk of the insurance product. We don't have any problems with cloudy conditions, so this really has the capability throughout the growing season when there's often quite some clouds, and often there's also not really consistent data records that you can develop a reliable index. So in summary, we provide objective soil moisture measurements. It's directly linked, this parameter is more directly linked to agricultural losses. We have a very high temporal and spatial resolution, and we also have an history of more than 18 years, which provides this option of really developing a reliable index. So we did this already for really a range of crops, building this insurance product. In Kenya, we have a product for maize. In Tanzania, we have a product for sunflower. And yeah, with that, I would like to conclude and pass back over to Parmesh. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Lexi, for a very interesting and you packed everything into a very short period of time. And you can see the kinds of questions which are coming, technical questions as well as specific questions. And I really appreciate your colleagues, really Berend and Mandy. I think both are really providing very, very specific answers and very approachable in doing that. We appreciate that. And please keep your questions coming, because that's also that we don't want this to be just a lecture, but we want the questions to keep on coming. But Lexi gave us a good flavor of what the solution is, what is currently going on, and what are the opportunities, and what is the unique thing about this data set. And I would now, and thanks for finishing in time. I think that's very good. And we have our next presenter now, and I would now ask Amos Tabalia to come in from ACRE Africa. And Amos, you have 7 minutes, and I would also ask the audience to keep on asking questions while presentations are going on. We will cluster these questions at the end and make sure that the panelists get to respond to your questions in even greater detail than what they're answering on the chat. Thank you very much. Over to you, Amos. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Parmesh, and thank you, Lexi, for the good presentation. I'm Amos. I work for ACRE Africa. We work in Africa, across the different regions in Africa. Our main role is basically to link smallholder farmers, specifically smallholder farmers, to microinsurance solutions. And we do this through product development and monitoring and connecting that whole, there's a whole value chain kind of approach to it. So that is what our main role is. Just to give an overview before I just do my presentation, is that there's a theory of change around agricultural insurance. So it's so important in the context of smallholder farmers, in the context of climate change, and then bringing in the data perspective. The main theory of change is that through insurance, agricultural insurance solutions, we are able to buffer these farmers from production losses. And just considering the impact of climate change, we've seen more variations in terms of weather perils and that kind of thing. And so we would try to use these tools to buffer these farmers, ensure that they can be able to get something out of it, or to protect themselves from those kind of losses. Then the second main component is that insurance also enables farmers to access or to crowd in other kind of investments. Just imagine, accessing things like inputs or things like credit finance. Traditional models do not really look at smallholder farmers to reach them out. But by introducing them to insurance, these institutions believe that they can be able to lend to these farmers, and that is what basically we try to do. We've done this over a couple of years in a couple of countries. Up to now, we have so far reached up to about 1.7 million farmers. And the one thing that is quite interesting is that initially we started these with a huge network of weather stations. We still have them, automated weather stations, quite expensive. I think in Kenya we have 78 automated weather stations. In Rwanda we have about 37 of them, which is a huge network and quite costly. But still we could not really meet, the farmers we wanted to get to. We could not even be able to to scale quickly, and also the products were not as robust as we would have wanted. And that is why now we started looking into satellite-based products such as soil moisture index. And so I'll just specifically speak about this one project that is quite exciting. And we are doing this project with, we've been doing it for 4 years with VanderSat. We've now moved to include CIAT, that is a research institution. We have SwissRe on board, and we have a number of other couple partners on board. So the product is called Amazing. And what we basically do is to, consume that data from VanderSat, design a product, and we are very keen on lowering basis risk. And this is one of the advantages of this soil moisture index insurance. at 100 meters, we're able to, to even do a bit of near on-farm kind of monitoring. But we also have other aspects that make it even much easier to work with, and also to make people understand how it works. The cost, we've realized in the last 2 seasons that the cost of the product is way cheaper compared to the other indices that we've been using. So it's a really interesting product for us. I've already said that in 2020, we did about 5,000 farmers. Policies were written under these, and this was a very high level kind of approach. We wanted to measure the impact even to the farmer. So we looked at the product from all the perspectives, and also wanted to see that it really translates into what farmers observe or experience. What we also do is that we try to, package these as a value proposition, a bigger value proposition, just beyond insurance itself. And so we were able to onboard other partners, including, credit providers and input providers. By doing this, we also try to bring in input providers who are providing stress tolerant varieties. But this enables farmers to, to have a bigger package, a more, resilient kind of package for their production. And it also not just protects them, but it also increases their production. An interesting component is that we also we have different methods of reaching out to these farmers. So with this product, we actually also piloted what we call the champion farmer model, where we have specific farmers in a specific village or region, and they work with other farmers. So it's more of a peer-to-peer kind of approach. And then they were able to to capacitate other farmers around them about this product, and then we could get feedback, and there was that kind of co-creation. In the next period, that is starting 2021, we already are doing about 13,000 farmers in this long range season. Our target is that between 2021 and 2022, we expand to other counties in Kenya, but at the same time, our target is to get to 300,000 farmers. We want to expand to different crops, and we will use all approaches, the micro, macro, and meso approaches. Just to remember, one thing is that we have support from the Insure Resilience Solutions Fund to expand this product in these 2 years, 2021, 2022, and we're really excited that we can be able to do more work, and I'll be happy that the next time we have this kind of conversation, we'll be giving you extremely good results. Thank you so much. Back to you, Pramesh. You're probably muted.
Okay, so thanks a lot, Amos. And we move now to and you gave us a good flavor of the solution as it's being implemented in Kenya. Next, over to Gidraff, please. And thanks, Amos, for being in time. And I would appreciate everyone doing that. Gidraff, over to you.
All right, thank you, Pamesh. So my name is Gidraff Washira, and I'm the program manager for Connected Farmer at Mezzanine. So I'll start by introducing who Mezzanine is and also Connected Farmer. So Mezzanine is a technology company that co-creates mobile, digital, and Internet of Things solutions within few sectors, including health, education, social services, and agriculture, with a shared value objective of enabling productive societies across Africa. So Mezzanine is a member of the Vodacom Group, but at the same time, we also take a very mobile network agnostic and implementing partner agnostic approach in implementing solutions. And we have vast experience in implementing these kinds of solutions in complex, limited resources settings. So in agriculture, we have experience in creating both enterprise and farmer-focused solutions since the year 2013. And our latest product is Connected Farmer, which is running in Tanzania, Uganda, and we are also looking to scale that into 9 other countries in Africa. So just as I mentioned, we being in this sector, in the agri sector, and coming up with the digital solutions for the since 2013, there are challenges that we have seen in this sector, especially in the smallholder agriculture. And this is not, I know it is not news to many of us who have been in this sector. And one of it is, lack of access to finance, financial services, be it credit, input credit, or insurance. So that's a big challenge, as well as access to inputs, quality inputs for that matter, for most smallholder farmers. So one of the ways we have, so within Connected Farmer, we are trying to solve that. We are trying to solve that challenge. So Connected Farmer, within Connected Farmer, what we do is we are creating a platform, a super platform for smallholder farmers, where they can access the critical components of the agricultural productivity, be it inputs and financial services. So from this presentation, you can see on the right-hand side, you will see the atom economy. So you see that we are putting the farmer at the center. So on one end, we are looking at the farmer having access to inputs, quality inputs for that matter, and also having access to buyers and processors. So that's one side where we look at the supply side and also the offtake side. But on the other side, there is also what we call the bit economy, where we give farmers access to credit and insurance as well. And then there will also be precision IoT as we move on, things to do, for example, to do with soil testing. And based on that, you can advise the farmer on what kind of fertilizers to use and things like those. So, and then on one end, on the other end, what we're doing is also advisory and content, because we know, I mean, with the experience that we have had is that you can give farmer the credit and you also give them the market or give them access to market, but you still have to go and train on new ways of production. One, because we know the average smallholder farmer in Africa is actually above
We've lost him.
Perhaps I can come in to share a little bit about the pilot, the next topic that Drought was going to talk about. And let's see if Drought comes back on. But we did a pilot together with Mezzanine and SwissRe, and I think the following slides sort of show the results of that pilot. We had 377 farmers insured in Bariadi and Manjoni, so 2 districts in the lake area of Tanzania, where we covered the sunflower value chain. And the SwissRe index insurance was similar to what I showed before. It covered 3 phases. So it had a germination phase, vegetation, and maturation phase. And yeah, we started off small, but the objective to grow bigger, and we have plans for the next season to scale up, or Mezzanine has plans to scale up to about 30,000 farmers the next season. These are the results actually of the soil moisture product, so of the run. So there was a product that started, 2 different products that started, basically one in January 15 and the other one in March 1st. And what we found is that in Bariadi district, actually a really big drought deficit, was building up throughout the season, and it actually caused some payouts for the farmers to take place. In the Manjoni district, this was less the case. Let me see if there was other slides that hear about edits. I think this sort of sums up the pilot for Mezzanine that we did. And if Jidraf is back on, maybe you can say a few words to conclude as well. So back to you, Pramesh.
There is some problem with my settings also. So unfortunately, I'm not able to automatically mute and unmute myself. So thanks a lot, Lexi, for stepping in. And I hope Jidraf is able to join later on. And I think it's good to show Mezzanine is a very interesting, Mezzanine is the original kind of holder of even the Safaricom and M-Pesa solution in Africa and always innovated on many ways. So we are very glad that Mezzanine is working on this solution with Lexi and others there. So over to now our last panelist, Marcel Andries from SwissRe. Marcel, over to you.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Hello from Zurich, Switzerland. So I'd like to give you some flavor in this short presentation on what we're doing wider as an industry with the data of VanderSat. So we started our collaboration some 4 years ago, and we are extending our soil moisture projects now on a global basis. So shortly about SwissRe. So SwissRe is the second largest reinsurer in the world. And we support farmers and insurance company that write crop insurance. We are around 30 people globally with offices all around, also one office in South Africa. What we see as the main trend for farmers is really the drought. So in the past, maybe hail or frost or flood was the main risk for farmers. What we see now is really the last 5-6 years, big losses through drought. That's both the frequency and the severity of these drought events. What you see here in the map is also in countries where traditionally you would not expect a drought. For example, here we have in the UK, in the Netherlands, in Baltics. These are not classical drought countries, but anyway, those drought happens and significant losses were there for the crops. It's an important topic, and that's not only in Africa, not only in Europe. It's really globally. You might think, okay, there has been droughts in the past, but if we look at the statistics on the graph at the right, you see that the last drought that we remember from the last 30 years compared with what happened in the last 5 years, it's really a new magnitude. Also, if you look at the data from Copernicus, the last 5 years have been the warmest globally of all years that were measured. So a big trend and a big demand for drought insurance, but what Lexi already said, it's not so easy to insure drought. Next slide. So together with VanderSat, we developed what we call a plug-and-play product that we can use in different parts of the world. So for the insurers, it's often very difficult to objectively assess the losses by drought. And the main thing where VanderSat really help us is on the scalability of such solutions. The other thing where we really like the product of VanderSat is the trust of the farmer. So the farmer, they absolutely grab the idea of the soil moisture. So it is, if you talk about an NDVI, a farmer is like, what are you talking about? With soil moisture, a farmer wakes up in the morning, he thinks about the soil moisture in his field, and in the evening he checks the weather forecast. So it's really something very close to his heart, and giving this daily access to this data really helps him both on the farming, but also to better understand the index products. So we have this 100 by 100 meter, we have the real-time data, we have the daily data. For us, very important is the good correlation with the yields. So for each country where we enter to launch this product, we do a detailed correlation analysis between deficits of soil moisture and deficits of yields. Correlations vary from, for example, Germany, it's more in the range 75%, and then in really dry regions, it's up to 90% correlation between yields and soil moisture. The other great thing is the fully digital processes. So, I mean, it's not a secret. Everything nowadays have to be digital, and farmers expect the same thing. So the services should be digital, the insurance process, the payouts. Next slide. So here an example. So we work together with the Ministry of Agriculture in Kazakhstan, and the ministry have digitized all the fields in Kazakhstan, have digitized all the farmers, and built a central platform, like an ecosystem where all services that the farmer can have access to from the government, but also from third-party providers, are all in a central place. The farmers have a login, and even there they can get the subsidies, they can get the insurance product. So also here, there is an insurance product in that platform. All the data and all the money is going to blockchain payments. So it's fully transparent from Ministry of Finance to the farmer, to the insurer, to the reinsurer, and also the data from VanderSat goes into the blockchain. This is really state of the art, and yeah, we believe this is really a great example. The efforts was really, I would almost say, limited. It took 2 years around to build the platform, to put in the products, and to launch. Next slide. So here another example. So this is what we are running in the Baltics with the insurance company in Europe, and also here. So we have an app which is called OptiCrop Index Tracker, and the farmer really can see on a daily basis what's the soil moisture level, what is the payout level. So you see the payout maps, you see the soil moisture map, you see the rainfall maps in that application. Currently, we're running this in 15 countries. We're expanding now together with VanderSat and our partners to the main agriculture producing countries in the world. And the other thing that's really in focus is we want to increase the impact on developing countries and smallholder farmers. So from our perspective, the solution is really, it works for even the biggest agro holdings, for the ministries, for banks, but also for smallholder farmers. So yeah, it's a really a good fit, and especially because it's totally digital, and there's almost no company we talk to that do not appreciate that transparency and this digital processes. Yeah, an exciting journey that we had together with Lexi and others in the VanderSat team, but I think there is still a lot more to come. Thank you, and back to you, Pamesh.
Thanks a lot, Marcel, and really giving us an overall perspective. And I think it's good that as a company like SwissRe and others are now looking at this option in a very different kind of way. And we would be interested in knowing that how does World Bank help to scale this up solution in Africa? You know, we would probably, that will be a question which will come to you in the final stage, which I'll raise to you. Keep questions coming, very interesting questions. I'm also having technical issues. I somehow have lost the chat history. I'm only getting current questions. And so I will try to see if I can rectify, and I'll ask Vivek to send me all the past questions. I have questions from 9:47 a.m. and I have lost the other questions. So I would request Vivek to send me the other questions. So, but we still have time. We would love now to go to Carlo from FAO. Carlo, over to you. Please go ahead. Carlo Brevi.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Pamesh. Yes, my name is Carlo Bravi. I'm a senior economist in the investment center in FAO. I'm one of the focal person on digital. I'm very happy to be in this webinar, which is extremely interesting, I think. First of all, congratulations to Lexi, Amos, Gidraf, and Marcel for their presentations. Very interesting, all of them. It's, I think it's striking to see how much information and useful services can be generated from an accurate observation of soil moisture, which is a very key parameter. And that tells us how much, water is central in our work, basically. From my part, I'll just have 2 comments, and I'll do this in 3 minutes, Parmesh. The first one relates to the soil moisture and soil organic carbon relationship. There's a strong relationship between these 2 parameters, and this means that soil moisture measurement can be used to improve the assessment of carbon sink capacity in the soils. And that's very important because, for instance, I was thinking that there's a tool that FAO and World Bank uses a lot, and it's called the EXACT tool. And the EXACT tool basically gives us it's a tracking tool for carbon footprints from agricultural activities, crops, livestock, forestry, but it's using mostly predefined coefficients. We call them tier 1 coefficients that are basically theoretical coefficients that link the activities to the carbon footprints through a different steps. Now, if listening to VanderSat presentation, it's very clear that you can have a much better estimates of these of this carbon soil content of carbon soil content if you use observation from the satellite, much more precise ones, and you can make the link between these soil moisture observations and the carbon content, and that will increase a lot the tool that we're using, and this would be beneficial to FAO, but also to World Bank, and there are many other international institutions using that tool. So I know that I have colleagues from the team, the EXACT team in FAO attending the webinar. Maybe they will come up with some question on or some comments on the question and answer session. My second point is on fintech. Fintech are digital solution used for improving access to rural finance. It can be for any finance, but in our case, it's rural finance. The main idea there is that you use digital solution to profile clients rather than sending loan officers in the field and discuss with farmers and neighbors and so on to get a client's profile. And what this digital profiling use is historical time series data, and VanderSat has a lot of that, yield prediction, non-traditional big data such as the digital footprints that we leave on the web, telecom records, mobility data, social network data. And the rationale for using this digital profiling is that it's cheaper and better in addressing risks. And there will be a big demand. There is already, but the demand for this kind of thing of services will grow over time and starting already now. VanderSat has a lot of potential. It was not presented today, but I think with their yield prediction product, their soil moisture insurance, they also have the TARA tool, I think it's called, it's the tool for agricultural risk advice. All this can be put together to increase the offer that VanderSat, the contribution to this fintech solution, which is going to grow over time very, very strongly. So good thing for both, for FAO, World Bank, but also for VanderSat to jump more into this area. That's it. Thank you, Parmesh, and back to you.
Thanks a lot, Carlos, for your remarks. I would now pass it over to Ademola, who is the coordinator of our Climate Smart Agriculture program and related with Climate Smart Agriculture and World Bank operations. Thanks a lot, Ademola. Over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Parmesh, and other previous speakers. Now, for a continent with increasing intensity of extreme weather events, where El Nino occurs now every 3 years and 1/5 of the population undernourished, I believe you agree with me that scaling up climate smart agriculture is very vital for Africa. And we do climate smart agriculture scaling up through the Africa Climate Business Plan that was launched at COP21 in Marrakesh. The goal of the Africa Climate Business Plan is to help African countries to better adapt to climate change and to build the continent's resilience to climate shocks. And we are seeing a lot of changes, a lot of progress as far as this is concerned. Now, what we also notice is that African countries adopt a range of context-specific climate smart agricultural technologies to meet their food security and climate change goals. And one of these is digital agriculture or digital solutions that, like Carlo just mentioned. Now, the question we ask ourselves is, why digital? Well, digital solutions help in the design and delivery of integrated weather and market advisories. And it uses big data analytics, and it helps countries to identify conditions that may endanger food security. It informs farmers' decision to adequately respond to such shocks and helps them to capitalize on changing climatic conditions. Now, in the last 5 years, when we look at our portfolio in Africa, we find that we have invested close to 210 million, and this should increase considerably in future as countries continue to embrace digital agriculture. So climate information services are one of the vital intervention areas. Then we also have agronomic and market advisories, and we have the investment in big data infrastructure, automated weather stations, and also the associated dissemination tools, for instance, through SMS, through automated weather stations, and so on. But what is more important, I'm bringing it home to the lessons learned and also what we have been talking about this morning. I've identified just 4 major lessons that we have learned in terms of our investments in digital solutions in Africa in the last few years. So these lessons I classify into demand areas as well as supply areas. So what is the first lesson? The first one is about scalability and targeting. What we found out that it is sometimes better to target some of the products coming up, be it insurance, be it fintech, associated services, at the meso level rather than at individual farmer level. So why is this important? Meso level operators represent an optimal channel to reach many smallholder farmers, and they are all sometimes the bridge to policymakers at the macro level. So example of these meso level operators are farmer organizations, input suppliers, as well as extension agents. Now, the second lesson that we have learned in terms of scaling up digital solutions is the need to bundle products and services together to create more impact. In Ethiopia and Kenya, for instance, where we operated agro-weather tools, we found out that crop yields increased by 2 to 4 times when access to weather and agronomic advisory services are bundled together. And we can see from what we've learned this morning that services such as finance and insurance, such as soil testing, as well as market advisories, when bundled together, will yield greater impact. Now, coming back to the supply side interventions. So one of the things is that enhancing technical skills and institutional capacity within key government agencies and departments is crucial for successful adoption. We have a very good example in Kenya where capacity is being built up in terms of technical tools, in terms of also the knowledge base to implement. So as at now, we understand that the tool sent there is disseminating about 4.8 million SMS services to farmers across the country. This is a very vital and this is very encouraging from the point of view of adapting to climate change and building resilience. So, and equally important is the need for climate smart policies to drive adaptation and resilience. It's not about technical assistance and institutional capacity alone. Then the last thing is to expand rural network coverage, as well as lower the entry costs for private sectors to facilitate competition among the digital platform providers. This is very, very important and would help see a multiplier effect as far as the digital solutions for increasing resilience in our countries are concerned. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ademola, for really showing the overall perspective of other things which are going on in Africa, how it links up. Your point about bundled is very important. If people just get insurance and financial services and they don't get weather advisory and extension services, it's difficult for them to make money eventually. So we're reducing the risk, but we want them to make money as well. So I think you brought in a very interesting perspective on how we could bundle other things with this and also give us the perspective of what all is happening in Africa. I'll now pass over to Nkumo. Nkumo, floor is yours for next 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thanks very much, Pamesh, for inviting me to the session, and thank you to all the panelists for some very insightful presentations. So I come to this topic with a bit of an interest on issues of measurement of soil characteristics, particularly on indicators of soil health. You know, we've been doing some work in the World Bank where we are trying to develop protocols for tracking changes in soil organic carbon, you know, using many different tools, you know, measurement tools, modeling, and more, of course, you know, moving towards digital technologies and also looking at things such as satellites. And so this is kind of my interest in this topic, and I do think some of the lessons we are learning from there are fairly transferable as well to work regarding, you know, tracking changes in soil moisture. And as was, you know, rightly put across by Carlo, there is a relationship between, you know, soil moisture and soil organic carbon. You know, in most cases, you know, the higher the soil organic carbon, the healthier the soils, you know, the better they retain soil moisture. And of course, ultimately, you know, it's best for farmers in terms of their yields and potentially for their income. So there's a very nice, lovely relationship there, which again makes it, even though slightly different, you know, some of the lessons we have from the work we're doing could easily be transferable. So having said that, I would like to reflect then on issues to do with monitoring technologies as we learn them from trying to monitor changes in soil organic carbon. And if I do have time after that, maybe reflect a little bit on the issue of bundling services that Ademola just put across, which I also think is a very, very important issue. So on the technology side, you know, in the soil health work, there are three main things, or at least three main challenges that we've found that we've had to deal with, you know, in trying to see how we can increase investments in soil health. And one of those is that, you know, with smallholder farmers, you know, their plots of land are usually small, and there's always challenges on can we actually, you know, be able to measure the variations that occur in such small pieces of land. You know, this is an issue that comes up over and over again. And the second issue again is on the issue of that monitoring can be very, very uncertain. You know, can we say with confidence that the monitoring tools that we're using and what they're reporting is actually what is happening on the ground, right? We get this question over and over again. And the third issue has always been around the fact that, you know, measuring soil changes in soil characteristics can be really costly and time consuming for you to measure and to verify these changes. You know, you've got to go to the field multiple times, use expensive widgets, and you have to do some very expensive analysis. So these are three issues that we've had to deal with, and I'm quite sure, you know, on the soil moisture side as well, listening to Lexi's presentation, some of these issues do come up, right? Issues about resolutions, uncertainty, and cost. But I think one of the takeaway things that we do get from that work is that, you know, technologies that are emerging are really giving a very great opportunity to deal with a lot of these issues. Now, one good example would be, of course, you know, satellite technologies in the soil organic carbon work really help us to be able to reduce the cost of verification, which is a massive cost, which a lot of the time gets passed on to farmers, right? Which also, again, makes it very difficult for them to increase their incomes. And so technologies here clearly can really come in and help help with that, which is great. And the caution, of course, that we always sort of give based on this experience from this work is that, you know, as much as we want to incorporate technologies and you know, we do a lot of that, you know, there's always need for still carrying out some sort of on-ground measurements for validation of the models, of the tools for verification. And this is something that needs to still be done. Of course, you know, incorporating technologies in that helps to reduce the overall cost of doing that. And also, therefore, you know, reducing the cost burden on the farmer themselves. And so I think it would also be interesting to also see, you know, if this is an issue that also really does come up with the, you know, with the soil moisture index based insurance. But at the end of the day, you know, from all that, one of the main things that I think I've learned coming out of that is that, you know, as we're using these innovative technologies, you know, we should try and avoid, you know, having the perfect be the enemy of the good enough. You know, there will always be some uncertainties here and there. You know, there will be some challenges, but, you know, if there is a clear benefit for farmers at the end of the day, such as stabilizing their incomes, I think these are things that are really worth exploring. So I'm really quite glad to see, you know, this index insurance that is being based on these soil characteristics measurements. And, you know, just taking a minute to reflect on this issue on bundling that I mentioned earlier, you know, in my other life, I'm a farmer, or, you know, I would precisely say my family is into farming. And, you know, I have some very personal experiences on, you know, risks to do with weather, but also risks to do with, you know, with markets. And this is reflecting on some of the things that have been presented here, you know. A few years ago, we were involved in tobacco farming in Zimbabwe, and I was glad to see that you have some examples from Zimbabwe there, Lexi. And, you know, this is an enterprise that smallholder farmers are really getting involved in the country, but of course it's a high investment cost that goes into that. But, you know, the returns, you know, the promises of returns are very, very high. But I would say to you, you know, over the 4 to 5 years that we were involved in tobacco farming, you know, we never turned a profit once. And, you know, at the end of it, we actually moved away from tobacco farming to something that we thought was a bit more stable, which was pig farming, which we still kind of do today. And the two primary challenges we experienced there was actually one on weather and the second one on the market. And on the, you know, one season or the other, you know, it was either weather that was a problem and, you know, so your crop was destroyed as a result, or you just couldn't get a very good enough price at the market. And in some seasons, you would actually get both problems where the season is decent, but you had a dry spell in the middle, which reduced the quality of your crop, which meant you fetched a lower price at the market. So I do think, you know, it would have been great for us to have a product such as this, right, where you could really be able to insure and reduce the risk on the weather side. And particularly, I was really interested to see that, you know, you have an opportunity to actually reduce the risk in terms of, you know, small variations that happen within the season. And for a crop such as tobacco, you have a small dry spell of two weeks during an entire season. That looks to be a good season, and already the value of a crop reduces, and so your income is also reduces. But the other side of the equation, I think, is also very important. You know, the idea of, you know, bundling that with, you know, market access, market linkages, I think is really, really important because we could fix, you know, the weather risk side of things. But I think if farmers don't really get good access to the market, they still don't get as much value as they can out of this kind of a service. And I was glad to actually see that, you know, the connected farmer approach does look at it at a very holistic level, right? Where you're talking about credit, where you're talking about access to finance, And then, of course, on the other side, really helping farmers to have access to markets. I think that bundling of those services is a very important thing to highlight.
Thanks a lot, Nkumo. I'm sorry we are running short of time now. So I appreciate your perspective of bringing the soil carbon thing and also showing the connectedness of various solutions from your own perspective of your own farm in Zimbabwe. That's a very rich kind of perspective. I would now like to go to Vijay Kolakonda. And Vijay, over to you now. And so that we can get some time for the audience to come in. So please stay with your 5 minutes. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Pramesh, and thanks to the presenters. And I'm going to be basically putting my sort of an observation in on three sort of parameters. One is sort of the positivities that we see with this type of product, the soil moisture index. And second is going a little bit on the critiquing side, coming from a technical perspective. And the third one is where can we basically push the boundaries of some of these type of products and solutions, the innovation that we're basically coming out with. On the positive side, I think what you see with this type of product, something when you look at weather-based index insurance, those of us who have been involved in, which has predominantly been based on precipitation or temperatures or other things. There are a lot of flaws in this particular model, like what we see in a typical, weather-based index insurance, which is based upon a hurricane index or a wind speed. Because when you do wind speed, you're only looking at wind speed. Whereas when you look at losses, what you miss out when you focus on wind speed, you're missing out the central pressure of the eye of the storm, which could potentially lead to a huge amount of precipitation and rainfall, even though the wind speed might just only be category 1 or category 2, but the damages caused by the precipitation might be substantially larger and you miss out. In a similar way, when you're basically looking at weather-based index insurance for agriculture, which is based on rainfall or temperature, you're probably missing out one of the critical inputs is what is the soil moisture, what is the availability of water for the crops to grow. I think in that sense, I think bringing in this additional dimension of soil moisture basically strengthens the product in that particular perspective. So I think it's a very great development to see this sort of a thing happening. The second sort of a benefit that you see with respect to soil moisture type of a product is that you can basically expand it not just only to the rain-fed areas, but also in irrigated areas, particularly when you have canal irrigation. What happens to the farms which are at the end of the canal, okay, where you will not be able to basically estimate, directly correlate with respect to the run of the canal, but based upon the soil moisture, you can look at it. So I think, again, these type of products really basically help in that particular sense. And finally, what you also benefit from a soil moisture type of an index insurance product is that when you look at a precipitation or a temperature, you're looking at rainfall, cumulative rainfall over a decile, 10 days or 15 days or whatever it is. But what happens, there are a lot of characteristics of the soil which basically plays. You may have a 10-day cumulative rainfall in a particular type of a soil, like a clay type of a soil or a sandy soil, where the sort of an impact are totally different. So by looking at soil moisture, you're able to take care of the characteristic of the soil along with the precipitation and give a much more sort of a robust sort of a feeling of the index. So in that sense, I think it's a very positive development. Now, where do I see some of the critiques of this particular sort of a thing? One is we all know that drought is a slow onset disasters, okay? So these are things that takes over a period of time. It is not like typically a precipitation or something which is a sudden onset. And here you're dealing with a slow onset disaster. To what extent soil moisture on a standalone basis is able to basically capture and reflect on the damages caused? Because if there has not been a sufficient rainfall for about, say, 3-4 years, and suddenly you get a rainfall, is that really going to be translating into some sort of a positive benefit on the crops? So these are things one needs to look at. Second thing is that to what extent, we are able to granularize on the quality of the soil that is there as well, and to what extent that is getting reflected. So I think we need to look at some of these things. And finally, what you see as a critique as well is the derived root zone soil moisture index, which is the key to come up with the standardized soil moisture index. What you see is these are basically developed synthetically, okay? I go back, when we started in the World Bank engaging with the weather-based index insurance in 98, 99, it was a novelty. People thought that it was a great idea to the traditional way of doing crop insurance. But then people are very highly supportive of looking at, index-based insurance. And there was a lot of buzz around it. A lot of developmental financial institutions spent millions of dollars. World Bank spent millions of dollars. And over the years, as we gained experience, the critique of the product became more and more stronger. So I think probably, I hope we are not going to be in the same situation, the soil moisture, because it's still too early days for us to celebrate. But I think it is certainly worthwhile to basically push the boundaries of innovation that things will happen. And finally, I would like to close by saying that we need to look at use cases. I think insurance is one use case, and it might probably be not the right use case to start with. Can we basically look at some of these type of products where the use case are more in terms of giving early warnings to the farmers? How could you use the soil moisture index type of information to help and demonstrate to the farmer that they can basically save on input cost, application of inputs and various other things? So that's where I think we need to be looking at and doing further more work. So let me stop there, Parmesh, and let's go for the Q&A.
Thanks a lot for sharing your rich experience, Vijay. You have been involved in all the weather risk-related index insurance work the World Bank has done. And we hope that we'll be able to engage with this. And like the initial enthusiasm of weather index insurance didn't lead to scale, we should do something different this time to ensure that it goes to scale. So I would now go to I've picked some questions, and I really appreciate the VanderSat team for being so open and answering a lot of questions in the chat. So a lot of technical questions which the audience were raising about, why is this index you are using this, why aren't you using the other data, nuanced specifications about the technical aspects. I think they have been covered in the response on the chat, which Mendy and lots of other people have been offering in the chat, and really appreciate your response. And they also linked us with other recorded presentations which they have done, which cover the technical aspects in detail. So I will take some strategic questions, and we'll go through one round for every presenter, because that's the time we have for now. So Lexi, the question I have for you is that, is this technical approach you have is signed and sealed, or you are still doing innovations as Vijay is talking about? And what do you see as the major ways by which further improvements could be done in the protocol or index which you have developed? Are there other things we can look at? And the related question for you is, do you see other applications beyond insurance, as Nukumo talked about soil carbon? Because soil carbon is now, in the climate smart thing, is the next big thing. And if we were able to somehow link what you're doing on soil moisture with soil carbon and other aspects of soil, then that could be a very important thing going forward. Because this thing, soil carbon, we expect that this will be even bigger than anything we have seen in future, basically, in terms of the market for soil carbon related, products. Yeah. So can you take these two questions, and I'll come back then to others as we go forward. And please be brief, because we want to make sure that we cover everything by the time comes in. Over to you, Lexi.
Thanks, Parmesh. I'll be very brief. In terms of innovations for the insurance product, yes, definitely. We're always looking to see, okay, how can we make this product better? So I just already showed you an example of this newly developed biomass product, which I think could be really well. We're doing some R&D trajects with to see what that would be suitable for yield index insurance. So those are some of the things we're taking on, as well as developing a new product on pasture index insurance, not only covering crops. In terms of the soil moisture relation to carbon storage, that is a relationship we're well aware of, and we're really excited to be exploring that. So we're getting quite some approaches from other people wanting to collaborate on this. So we're very open, and we'd really like to start off. So I think also Mendy posted her email address in the chat. So we'd be really looking forward to see what we can do together. Maybe we can organize a webinar on that, half a year later. So thanks a lot, Parmesh.
So just one more question to you. So how do you, if you want to work with the World Bank on this data and scale up the program in Africa, how would you go about doing it? Do you have any practical suggestion for us on how to take this forward?
I think it would be great to make a stronger link also with the Global Index Insurance Facility to see what programs they're active in, how we can see how soil moisture data could actually help improving those products that are already going on. And specifically, I think also the early warnings systems were mentioned before. How can we plug soil moisture into these early warning systems that are going on to warn people about looming food crises globally? So that's something I would really like to explore. Yeah.
So thanks a lot. And so those teams, we will ensure that we do some follow-up conversation with you on how to take forward, because early warning is also a very important product. We have a huge amounts of financing going on early warning now systems. And then the one with the soil carbon is also important. The global index insurance facility is also there. And we could also talk with the selected teams we have in Africa on how we can take what you have done on smaller scale to scale in the investments we are doing going forward. Thanks a lot. I will now go to Amos. Amos, can you tell us how effective are these approaches when you are working with smallholders? And what is your experience that what is the biggest constraint to going on scale on these solutions? Please.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for the question. I think working with smallholders is quite challenging, but it's also quite fulfilling. One of the main constraints is the capacity, understanding of these products. These are basically quite complex things, and I think someone asked about that in the question place. So what we try to do is to find, the best approaches on how we can capacitate the farmers. We are not just about selling this to them or, that, but, capacitating them is quite important. I think we are also at a phase whereby, it's an informational edge kind of thing. So farmers have to opt in by knowing exactly what they are getting into. And that is one of the things that we think is quite important and needs to be, to be worked on. I think another constraint is, I think someone mentioned about the end-to-end kind of view of, thinking about markets. You're talking about insurance, but we have to think, okay, you've provided the insurance, so you've provided the advisory. If the farmer harvests, where will he sell? So I think thinking of these solutions, especially at smallholder level, the smallholder farmers have a lot of challenges that need to be looked into. So we need to work closely with them and just, think of a whole kind of value chain approach to this solution. Partnerships with, seed providers, researchers, public companies, civil society. These are quite important. It's not just about the physical index itself. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Amos. And let me go to Gidraf now, who unfortunately was interrupted. So Gidraf, in your work at Mezzanine, what you are doing, everyone appreciated that you are bringing markets and other things and bundling that with the solution. You're not looking at insurance as a silver bullet, basically. You have a more comprehensive way of doing that. Now, from your experience of doing this in Tanzania and what you have seen, how does this go further? And I just want to ask you also that what do you see as the major investments which should be done by public sector, which clearly the governments, because World Bank supports governments. What could we do to ensure that what you are doing in Tanzania gets scaled up? What should we do more?
Okay. I think let me start with the first question. And for us, we are quite interested in scaling to more farmers, both in Tanzania and in other African countries. So it has been really, helpful for us. And I think as Amos said, the challenge, the challenge has always been how you communicate that. But we are trying to bridge that gap by, bundling of the insurance as part of the input credit. So I think there is, for us, we're looking at it from a very holistic point of view, but also then also work with people within the villages where the farmers are, like the village-based advisors, to bring all these services and products to the farmer. Where the governments come in, for us in Tanzania, actually, we have had very good relations with government. And what we have had discussions at different levels. And I think governments is to basically support the digitalization of farmers. Yeah. So so that one of the challenges, again, going back, is access to finance, and as part of the challenges. So if we can get farmers digitized on platforms like Connected Farmer and start getting historical data on the farmers, it becomes much easier even for government to use the data, even for policy reasons, to formulate policy. But in Tanzania, I would say there has been a lot of support from both the national and also the regional governments. Like now, for instance, we do, there is a pilot study by the government to do, to pilot more into sunflower in 3 regions, which is basically within, again, the policy of not importing sunflower seed. So that in itself, increases, the productivity of local farmers. So for us, we come in and plug in terms of, giving the farmers the capacity now to produce. Yeah.
Very, very important perspective, and we look forward to working closely with you going forward. I'll now go in the end to Marcel. Marcel, you heard about the initial excitement on weather risk insurance and all. As a reinsurer, as an insurance player, do you see soil moisture index being different from weather? And what do you see? Why you think that this will achieve higher traction and scale? From your perspective, what's your perspective about this being scaled up? Will it go slow and steady, or will it go? Can this go more grow in a more disruptive way? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So when it comes to the weather stations, the struggle has been that often the distance between the fields and the weather station is significant. So we're talking 30, 50 kilometers, and also in the past, those weather stations, we get the data only after 2 months, after 3 months. Some of the weather hydromet offices in the world are not the most flexible to work with. So our goal is really to monitor on a daily basis and to have payouts just after the season. And yeah, we feel with the weather stations, I think the biggest minus point was really this lag in time. There are, of course, now cheaper, totally connected weather stations. And if you put in a country 5,000 weather stations, all fully connected with the internet, this is also a way. But in the end, we feel that's much more expensive than just letting the satellite fly over, right? So how our client in Kazakhstan described the VanderSat data is every pixel is a weather station. So that's why we really like the product.
Thank you very much, Marcel.
I think you're on mute.
Thanks a lot, Marcel. And I think we are looking forward that how we work with a consortium of institutions, because it requires a consortium. It doesn't, one institution cannot do it. There is a data part, there is the product and services part, and then there's the insurance, people who are working on developing these products, and at a higher level, how do they perceive these products there? So I think that's a very interesting perspective. So I think we have very interesting questions still coming, and that shows how much interest this webinar has already generated. I appreciate what Lorenzo from FAO is also talking about, using these approaches to do soil moisture monitoring could help refine the SOC stocks, and the climate mitigation potential could also be developed much better apart from the other applications which are there. And we hope that we are able to build on that application as well. And that could be also a promising application. So I want to thank all the panelists and all the discussants. And I want to also thank all the people who participated in the virtual chat and the extended VanderSat team for really being so open and answering most of the questions. We will curate this chat, and that will be part of the recording. And so the chat will also be available to you so that you can see all these answers and questions as part of the recording of what we see. We see a huge potential for these approaches. I think we would arrange a subsequent discussion with 8 or 10 of our teams in Africa where VanderSat is launching pilots or already has pilots, and see if we can develop a practical kind of collaboration going forward. And we will also take on Lexi's other suggestions about the global index insurance facility and other ideas which came on today. And this is very promising, and because the climate change is there, and we need to know about the microclimatic variations and enable farmers to really mitigate that risk, which is coming through drought and other kinds of things, moisture stress, which comes in from other places. Vivek, if you can put through the next webinar announcement there. I just want to advertise that the next webinar is on creating a center for excellence for smallholder farmers to scale up digital agriculture innovations in East Asia and Pacific. We have a very rich panel from IFC and Bayer Crop Sciences, and from IPB University Indonesia, and Grow Asia, and Olam, which is one of the largest agribusiness companies. So we have a very interesting on the next Thursday. Please join us at 8 a.m. For that. And if you want to register, you have a smartphone link, but you will also get a link. All the people who came today will also get a link to that webinar. So look forward to seeing you in the next one on next Thursday. But today I want to thank everyone for staying for so long and really engaging in a very, very interesting way. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, Parmesh. Bye then.
Thanks, Lexi, and thanks, Marcel. Thanks.